Unexpected encounters. Olivia Reed checked her watch for the third time in 5 minutes, her heart racing as she adjusted her portfolio under her arm. The elevator climbed steadily toward the executive floor of Lumiere Fashion House, where she would present her designs to the notoriously critical CEO. Julian Westbrook. At 32. Olivia had fought hard for this junior designer position after years of freelancing while raising her son Ethan alone. Her morning had been chaotic. Ethan's babysitter canceled last minute, forcing her to drop him at the company's daycare facility. Despite her misgivings about mixing her personal and professional lives, the elevator doors opened to reveal a sleek corridor of glass and chrome. Olivia straightened her simple navy dress, wishing she'd had time for more than the minimal makeup she'd applied. Rumor had it that Julian despised overly made-up women, considering them distractions in the workplace. As if women didn't have enough impossible standards to meet. Ms. Reed, his assistant, Bianca, greeted her with practiced politeness. "Mr. Westbrook is finishing a call. Please wait." 20 minutes later. Olivia was ushered into Julian's office, a minimalist space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Julian Westbrook sat behind a black desk, his posture impeccable. At 40, he had the sharp features of a man who rarely smiled, dark hair with distinguished silver at the temples, and piercing gray eyes that seemed to evaluate everything in terms of profit margins. "You're the one from the Henderson account," he stated rather than asked, not bothering to stand. "Yes, sir." Olivia Reed. She extended her hand, which he shook briefly. "I've prepared the preliminary designs for the spring collection." As she laid out her sketches, Julian remained silent, his expression unreadable. His fingers, long and elegant, traced the edge of one drawing, and Olivia held her breath. "The asymmetrical hemline is unexpected," he finally said. "But the market research suggests conservative styles for next season." "With respect, Mr. Westbrook, conservative doesn't have to mean predictable. These designs honor tradition while introducing subtle innovations that will set Lumiere apart." A flicker of something surprise perhaps crossed his face before the mask returned. Bold statement from someone who's been here less than 3 months. "I wouldn't be here if I didn't believe in what I create," Olivia responded, surprising herself with her confidence. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Westbrook, there's an issue at the daycare facility requiring your attention." Julian frowned. "Handle it, Bianca." "They specifically requested you, sir. Something about board policy." With an irritated sigh, Julian stood. "We'll continue. This later, Ms. Reed." "Leave your portfolio?" Olivia nodded. But as Julian strode toward the door, her phone vibrated, or a text message from the daycare. "Please come immediately." "Ethan is upset, Mr. Westbrook," she called, gathering her things. "I need to go as well. It's my son." His eyebrows rose slightly. "You have a child in our facility?" "Yes, I'm sorry. It was an emergency arrangement. I wasn't aware we employed." "Single parents in the design department?" he remarked coldly. Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "My personal life doesn't affect my work quality, Mr. Westbrook." They rode the elevator in uncomfortable silence. When they reached the daycare floor, the scene that greeted them was unexpected. Little Ethan, with his mother's honey-brown curls and wide eyes, was sobbing while a flustered caretaker tried to console him. "Mommy," he cried when he spotted Olivia, running to her arms. "What happened, sweetheart?" she asked, kneeling to his level. "I drew a picture for you, but Thomas said it was ugly." Ethan hiccuped, pointing to a crumpled paper on the floor. Before Olivia could respond, Julian, to everyone's astonishment, picked up the drawing. He studied the colorful scribbles that vaguely resembled a woman in a dress. "Thomas is wrong," he said, his voice softer than Olivia had ever heard it. "This shows excellent use of color contrast. A future designer, perhaps." Ethan's tears stopped abruptly as he stared up at the tall man in the expensive suit. "Really?" "Really," Julian confirmed, handing the drawing to Olivia. Their fingers brushed, and for a moment, something unguarded passed between them. Then Julian straightened, his expression hardening once more. "Ms. Reed, we'll reschedule for tomorrow, 9 sharp." He turned to the daycare supervisor. "I expect a full report on how conflicts are managed in this facility." As he walked away, Olivia caught Ethan watching him with curious admiration. "Who is that man, Mommy?" "That's Mr. Westbrook. He owns this whole building." He's nice, Ethan declared simply. With a child's unerring instinct for seeing through facades, Olivia wasn't so sure. But for a fleeting moment, she had glimpsed something beneath Julian Westbrook's cold exterior. Something that made her wonder what other surprises lay behind those steely gray eyes. Walls crumbling 3 weeks after the daycare incident. Olivia hurried through Lumiere's marble lobby, balancing a coffee tray in her design portfolio. The company's annual spring showcase was tomorrow, an event where employees brought their families to preview the upcoming collection. For Olivia, it represented both opportunity and anxiety. Her designs had earned Julian's reluctant approval, but his demeanor toward her remained frosty at best. "Morning, Olivia," called Dominic from marketing, falling into step beside her. "Ready for the big day?" Word is Westbrook's in a particularly foul mood. Apparently, the board suggested he make the showcase more personable this year. Personable? Olivia laughed. Julian Westbrook wouldn't know personable if it handed him a business card. The elevator doors opened, revealing the man himself. Julian's eyebrow arched as they scrambled inside. "Mr. Westbrook." Dominic nodded nervously before exiting at the next floor with a sympathetic glance at Olivia. Alone with Julian, Olivia focused on the ascending floor numbers, acutely aware of his coloncy, expensive with notes of cedar and bergamot. "I trust you're prepared for tomorrow, Miss Reed," Julian said, breaking the silence. "The Henderson account representatives will attend specifically to see your designs." "I'm ready," she assured him, though her stomach knotted at the reminder. "Your son? Will he be attending?" The question caught her off guard. "Ethan, as though I was planning to have him stay with the child care service during the presentations." Julian frowned slightly. "The showcase is meant to be family inclusive. Your son should experience your accomplishments." Before Olivia could respond, they reached the executive floor. Julian exited without another word, leaving her bewildered by his unexpected concern for Ethan's inclusion. The next morning dawned bright and clear. Olivia dressed Ethan in his special occasion outfit, khaki pants and a blue button-down that matched his eyes. "Will the building owner man be there?" Ethan asked, as she combed his unruly curls. "Mr. Westbrook?" "Yes, he'll be there," Olivia replied, surprised by her son's continued interest in her intimidating boss. "Good," Ethan nodded decisively. "I drew him another picture." Olivia bit her lip, uncertain how Julian would react to such a gesture. "Sweetheart, Mr. Westbrook is very busy today." ... He won't be too busy, Ethan insisted with childlike certainty. He promised. "When did you speak to Mr. Westbrook?" "When I was waiting for you yesterday. He asked if I was coming to the big party." Olivia frowned, trying to recall when Ethan and Julian could have crossed paths. She'd picked up Ethan from the company daycare as usual, but had been delayed in a meeting. Had Julian actually sought out her son? The showcase was in full swing when they arrived. The main atrium had been transformed with runway platforms and display cases featuring Lumiere's spring collection. Executives mingled with designers and their families, while photographers captured the scene. Olivia's designs, a series of evening wear pieces that blended architectural precision with unexpected softness, were prominently displayed near the center. She felt a surge of pride seeing her work showcased alongside industry veterans. "Ms. Reed," Julian's voice came from behind her, "your display is drawing considerable attention." She turned to find him immaculately dressed in a charcoal suit, looking more approachable than usual, if only slightly. "Thank you for giving my designs this placement," she said. "It's more than I expected." "I recognize quality when I see it," he replied simply. Ethan, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly tugged on Julian's sleeve. "I brought you something." Olivia watched nervously as her son handed Julian the carefully folded drawing. Around them, conversations quieted as employees stared in fascination at the interaction between the notorious CEO and the small boy. Julian knelt to Ethan's leveler, gesture so unexpected that Olivia heard audible gasps. With deliberate care, he unfolded the drawing, a stick figure man in a suit standing beside a smaller figure and a woman in a triangle dress. "That's you and me and Mommy," Ethan explained seriously, "because you don't have anyone to stand with at the party." An uncomfortable silence fell. Julian's expression remained unreadable as he studied the drawing, and Olivia wished the floor would swallow her whole. "Ethan, Mr. Westbrook doesn't," she began, but Julian interrupted her. "Thank you," he said to Ethan, his voice softer than anyone in the company had ever heard it. "I think I'll keep this in my office." Then, to everyone's astonishment, he offered his hand to the boy. "Would you like to see the chocolate fountain?" Ethan nodded enthusiastically, placing his small hand in Julian's much larger one. As they walked away, Olivia caught fragments of their conversation, Julian patiently answering Ethan's endless questions about the building. The designs, whether he liked superheroes. "Did that just happen?" whispered Heather from accounting, sidling up to Olivia. "I've worked here 7 years and never seen him smile. Your son is a miracle worker." "I don't understand it myself," Olivia admitted, watching as Julian helped Ethan create a chocolate-dipped strawberry tower. Later, as the event wound down, Olivia found Julian and Ethan sitting in a quiet corner. Ethan was demonstrating his best dinosaur roar, while Julian nodded with surprising seriousness. "I hope he wasn't bothering you," Olivia said apologetically. "Not at all." Julian stood, straightening his jacket. "Your son is ... refreshing. Most people here only tell me what they think I want to hear. Children don't know how to be anything but honest," Olivia agreed, a valuable quality. Julian hesitated, then added, "The Henderson representatives were impressed with your work. They've requested you as lead designer for their campaign." Olivia's eyes widened. That's incredible. Thank you for the opportunity. You earned it," he said simply. Then, with uncharacteristic awkwardness, he added, "Ethan mentioned he enjoys the Natural History Museum. It's the dinosaur exhibits, specifically." "He's obsessed," Olivia smiled. "We go whenever I can afford the time." Seemed to be weighing his next words carefully. "I happen to have tickets to the new exhibition preview next weekend. For donors, it would be educational for him." Olivia stared, trying to process what sounded suspiciously like an invitation. "Are you asking us to join you? Purely professional?" Julian clarified quickly. "To discuss the Henderson project in a less formal setting," but as he walked away, Olivia noticed something she'd never seen before, the slightest crack in Julian Westbrook's perfect facade. A glimpse of vulnerability that made her wonder if the man her son had drawn standing beside them connected existed somewhere beneath the armor he wore so well. Hidden chapters. The Natural History Museum buzzed with exclusive preview attendees, but Olivia barely noticed them. She was too preoccupied with the sight of Julian Westbrook in dark jeans and a cashmere sweater, a startling departure from his boardroom attire. Even more surprising was his genuine patience as Ethan dragged him from exhibit to exhibit, firing questions about each prehistoric creature. The Spinosaurus was actually semi-aquatic, Julian explained, kneeling beside Ethan. Recent discoveries suggest it spent much of its time hunting in water. "Like a crocodile?" Ethan asked, eyes wide with wonder. "Precisely." Very good comparison. Olivia watched them, puzzled by this transformation. The cold, demanding CEO had vanished, replaced by a man who seemed to have endless knowledge about dinosaurs and infinite patience for a 5-year-old's curiosity. "You didn't mention you were a paleontology enthusiast," she remarked when Ethan dashed ahead to the next display. Julian's expression shifted subtly. "I wanted to be a paleontologist when I was his age. I had quite the dinosaur collection. What happened to that dream? My father happened." Something darkened in his eyes. Harrison Westbrook believed science was for academics who couldn't succeed in business. "When I was 12, he donated my entire collection to charity while I was at school." A lesson in priorities. The bitterness in his voice made Olivia's heart twist unexpectedly. "That's awful." Julian straightened, mask slipping back into place. It was educational. "I learned what was expected of a Westbrook heir," he checked his watch. "There's a special interactive exhibit opening in 5 minutes. Ethan might enjoy it." They spent the afternoon immersed in prehistoric worlds. Julian arranged for Ethan to participate in a mock excavation, watching with what Olivia could only describe as wistful enjoyment as the boy carefully brushed sand from fossilized remains. When Ethan finally tired, Julian surprised her again by suggesting they continue their conversation at his penthouse apartment. My housekeeper will have prepared dinner, unless you have other plans. No other plans? Olivia replied, ignoring the voice in her head, questioning the wisdom of this increasingly non-professional outing. Julian's penthouse overlooked Central Park. The space immaculately designed, yet strangely impersonal, like a showroom rather than a home. The only exception was his office, where floor-to-ceiling bookshelves housed volumes on paleontology, archaeology, and natural history. You still read about it? Olivia observed while Ethan dozed on the sofa after dinner. Julian's fingers traced the spine of a book. Some interests are harder to extinguish than others. Why work so hard to appear cold when you're clearly not? The question escaped before she could stop it. Julian stiffened. Sentiment has no place in business. My father taught me that much correctly. Your father sounds like a difficult man. He was. Julian moved to a cabinet, pouring himself a scotch. Harrison Westbrook built Lumiere from nothing, but his methods were ... ruthless. He believed showing emotion was equivalent to showing weakness, and your mother left when I was 4. Couldn't tolerate Harrison's controlling nature. Julian's voice grew distant. I have only fragments of memories, her perfume, the sound of her laugh. After she left, Harrison ensured I understood that she chose freedom over motherhood, over me. The pain in those last words hung in the air between them. Olivia thought of Ethan, of how she'd fought to give him stability despite her struggles. As a single parent, is that why you noticed us? She asked softly, because of your mother leaving? Julian met her gaze, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes. I noticed you because you challenged me in that first meeting when everyone else cowers. But yes, I noticed Ethan because ... He paused. Children shouldn't feel abandoned. Olivia moved closer, drawn by the raw honesty in his voice. Father left before he was born. Said he wasn't father material. I've tried to fill both roles, but sometimes I worry it's not enough. It's enough, Julian said with surprising conviction. Ethan is confident, curious, kind of testament to your parenting. Their conversation shifted to the Henderson project, but something fundamental had changed between them. As Julian spoke about market trends and design philosophy, Olivia found herself studying the man rather than his words, the way tension held his shoulders rigid. How rarely he smiled despite the warmth she'd glimpsed with Ethan. Later, as they prepared to leave, Julian hesitated by the door. There's a board dinner next Friday. Key investors will attend. He seemed uncharacteristically uncertain. Your presence would be ... valuable. For the Henderson presentation, of course, Olivia nodded professionally. I'll arrange for a sitter. Actually, Julian cleared his throat. The invitation extends to Ethan as well. My father's oldest friend, Richard, will attend with his grandson. They're about the same age. Olivia raised an eyebrow. You want to bring a 5-year-old to a board dinner? Richard's influence on the board is significant. He appreciates family values. Julian's business explanation didn't quite mask the truth. Olivia was beginning to see he simply wanted Ethan there. Well, come, she agreed, adjusting her sleeping son in her arms. Julian reached out, gently taking Ethan from her. Let me help you to the car. The tenderness with which this supposedly heartless CEO carried her son made something shift inside Olivia's chest, a dangerous warmth she hadn't felt in years. In the elevator, Ethan stirred slightly, nestling against Julian's shoulder without waking. Julian stood perfectly still, as though afraid any movement might disturb the fragile connection. He trusts you, Olivia observed quietly. Children have poor judgment, Julian replied, but his arms tightened protectively around the boy. When they reached her car, Julian carefully transferred Ethan to the back seat. As he straightened, their faces were suddenly inches apart. For one breathless moment, Olivia thought he might kiss Hercule. See the consideration in his eyes, the slight parting of his lips. Instead, he stepped back, professional mask sliding firmly into place. Monday morning, 9 o'clock. We'll finalize the Henderson presentation. But as Olivia drove away, glancing in her rearview mirror, she saw Julian standing motionless on the sidewalk. Watching them depart, a solitary figure framed by city lights, looking for all the world like a man who had glimpsed something precious and wasn't certain he deserved to reach for it. At home, tucking Ethan into bed, she found a small box in his jacket pocket. Inside was a perfectly preserved fossila, small ammonite, set in a protective case, with a card that read simply, "For the future paleontologist. -JW." Olivia traced the spiral pattern of the ancient creature, thinking of cycles and second chances of walls built through pain and the unexpected people who somehow find their way through them. Storms weathered thunder rolled across Manhattan as Olivia stared at her computer screen in disbelief. The email from Henderson Luxury Group was unambiguous. They were pulling their account from Lumiere, citing creative differences and failure to capture their brand vision. The same designs Julian had praised that the Henderson representatives had supposedly loved were now being rejected completely. Have you seen this? Henderson's gone to Vanguard Designs. Word is their CEO, Patricia Blackwell, personally poached them yesterday. Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. Patricia Blackwell. Julian's former protege and notorious rival since her dramatic departure from Lumiere 3 years ago. The timing couldn't be coincidence. Does Julian know? She asked. No, he's been locked in the conference room with the board for 2 hours. Henderson was our biggest client. Dominic lowered his voice. People are saying heads will roll, starting with whoever was led on the account, meaning her. Olivia's stomach clenched. She'd invested everything in this job, moved across the city for the shorter commute, finally found stable childcare for Ethan. If she lost this position, ... her phone buzzed. A text from Julian. My office. Now. The executive floor was eerily quiet as Olivia approached Julian's office. Through the glass walls, she could see him standing at the window, shoulders rigid, storm clouds gathering behind him like a visual representation of his mood. Close the door, he instructed without turning when she entered. Olivia complied, steeling herself. Julian, I don't understand what happened. The designs were approved. It wasn't about the designs. His voice was glacial. It was about me. About us? Us, Olivia repeated, confusion momentarily overriding her anxiety. Julian turned, his expression more closed off than she'd seen since their first meeting. Patricia contacted the Henderson board yesterday with photos of us at the museum, at dinner. She suggested I was compromising business ethics by becoming ... involved with a subordinate. That your promotion to lead designer was based on personal favor rather than merit. Olivia felt heat rush to her face. That's absurd. We haven't there. Isn't perception matters in this industry? Julian cut her off. The board is concerned about potential scandal. They're suggesting I remove you from all major accounts to mitigate appearances of impropriety. The implications hit her like a physical blow. So I'm being demoted because we spent time together outside of work. Time that you initiated? Something? Flashed in Julian's eyes, pain perhaps, or regret before his expression hardened. I'm trying to save your position entirely. Richard was the only board member who defended our ... association. Association, Olivia repeated bitterly. Is that what you call it when you spend hours with my son? When you give him fossils and dinosaur books? When you tell me about your father and mother? I made a mistake, Julian said flatly. I allowed personal considerations to influence business decisions. It won't happen again. The words stung more than Olivia expected. So that's it. You're just cutting us out of your life because some board members and your vindictive ex-colleague disapprove. Thunder crashed outside, matching the tension in the room. Julian's jaw tightened. This isn't personal, Ms. Reed. It's business. Bullshit. The word escaped before she could stop it. This is absolutely personal. You're scared. Excuse me. You're terrified of caring about someone because the last person you cared about abandoned you. So at the first sign of difficulty, you're doing exactly what your father taught, you choosing business over people. Julian went very still. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? Ethan asked about you every day this week. Asked when we'd see Mr. Julian again. Her voice cracked. Even asked if he could come to his school presentation. Next month? But I'll just tell him you were a mistake, shall I? A business consideration that didn't work out? Something crumbled in Julian's expression. Took a step toward her, then stopped as his phone rang. Checking the screen, his face darkened. "I have to take this. It's Richard." Olivia crossed her arms, waiting as Julian answered. But as the conversation progressed, his expression changed from irritation to shock. "When?" he demanded. "Why wasn't I informed immediately?" "Yes, I'll come now." He ended the call, already reaching for his coat. "Richard had a heart attack last night. He's in Mount Sinai. Is he stable for now?" Julian paused at the door. "This discussion isn't finished." "Actually, I think it is," Olivia replied, the hurt too fresh to ignore. "You've made your position clear. I'll clean out my desk." Olivia, for a moment, he looked like he might say more. But instead he turned and strode toward the elevator. Olivia stood in his empty office, the rain lashing against the windows, wondering how she'd explain to Ethan that another important figure had walked out of their lives. 3 hours later, she sat at her kitchen table surrounded by job listings, trying to calculate how long her savings would last. The storm had intensified, matching her mood as she contemplated starting over again. A knock at the door startled her. When she opened it, she found Julian standing in her hallway, soaking wet, looking unlike himself, disheveled, exhausted. His customary control nowhere in evidence. "What are you doing here?" she asked, too surprised to maintain her anger. "Richard is dying," he said without preamble. "Pancreatic cancer. He's known for months, but kept it private. The heart attack was a complication." "I'm sorry," Olivia said, meaning it despite everything. "I know he's important to you. He told me I'm making my father's mistakes." Julian's voice was raw. His exact words were, "Harrison chose Lumiere over happiness and died alone. Don't be such a damn fool." Rain dripped from his hair as he stood in her doorway, looking lost, in a way that made Olivia's heart ache despite her best intentions. "Come in before you catch pneumonia," she sighed. Stepping aside, Julian entered cautiously, glancing around her modest apartment. "Is Ethan at a sleepover with his friend from daycare? The dinosaur enthusiast?" She handed him a towel. "The one he wanted to invite to his birthday party, along with you." "Oh." Julian closed his eyes briefly. "I've handled this badly." "Spectacularly." "Badly," Olivia agreed, but with less heat than before. The board meeting continued after I left. Richard had apparently anticipated Patricia's move. He had his lawyer deliver documents proving she's been systematically approaching our clients for months. The Henderson account was just the first success. "So your reputation is saved," Olivia observed. "Congratulations." "I don't care about my reputation." The vehemence in his voice surprised her. "I care that I nearly threw away something valuable, because I was afraid." Richard was right. I've been living my father's life, not my own. He stepped closer, still clutching the towel. "I came to ask if you'll stay at Lumiere, not just stay at the creative director position for the spring line." Olivia blinked. "Creative director? That's 4 levels above my current position. Where your talent belongs." Julian hesitated, then added more quietly, "But even if you won't stay at Lumiere, I needed to tell you that the time I spent with you and Ethan wasn't a mistake. It was the most real thing in my life in years." The raw honesty in his voice made Olivia's carefully constructed defenses waver. "Julian, I can't do this halfway. Ethan's already attached to you. Can't let him be hurt when you decide business. Needs to come first again." "I'm not asking for halfway," Julian said, taking her hand. "I'm asking for a chance to prove that I can be someone worthy of both your trust, someone Ethan can count on." He smiled faintly. "Someone who remembers there are things more important than quarterly reports." Outside, the storm began to subside, the rhythm of rain gentling against the windows as Olivia studied the man before her, not the untouchable CEO, but the person who had knelt to admire a child's drawing, who still treasured dinosaur books, who had driven through a thunderstorm because he couldn't bear the thought of losing something precious a second time. "You're already late for your first test," she said finally. "Ethan's dinosaur diorama is due Monday. He was counting on your expertise." Relief and something like joy transformed Julian's face. "I happen to be extremely knowledgeable about proper Jurassic plant species." His fingers tightened around hers. "Olivia, I can't promise I won't make mistakes, but I can promise I'll never walk away again." As the last rumbles of thunder faded into the distance, Olivia allowed herself to believe that some storms came not to destroy, but to clear the air, for something new to grow. Rewritten future 6 months after the Henderson crisis, Lumiere's headquarters hummed with anticipation. The spring collection, Olivia's first as creative director, had garnered unprecedented pre-orders, and fashion critics were calling it the brand's most innovative line in a decade. Olivia stood before the mirror in her new office, adjusting her blazer before the final presentation. The woman reflected back at her, looked different from the nervous junior designer who had first stepped into this building, more confident, perhaps, but also more at peace. Nervous? Julian appeared in the doorway, impeccably dressed as always. Though his demeanor had softened in ways the entire company had noticed. Surprisingly, no. She smiled, watching as he crossed the room to straighten her already perfect collar. The collection speaks for itself, and I have excellent backup. You won't need backup. His hands lingered at her shoulders, but I'll be there regardless. The transition in their relationship hadn't been seamless. Julian's instinct to retreat behind professional barriers resurfaced during their first public appearance as a couple at the Fashion Awards. Patricia Blackwell had been there, whispering behind her champagne glass as cameras flashed around them. For a moment, Olivia had felt Julian withdraw, physically present but emotionally distant, till Ethan, resplendent in his first tuxedo, had tugged at Julian's hand and whispered something that made him laugh unexpectedly. The photographers had captured that moment of genuine joy. The resulting image had replaced the narrative Patricia tried to spin with something more compelling. The transformation of Manhattan's most notorious corporate ice king. Is everything ready for tonight? Olivia asked, gathering her presentation materials. Julian nodded. Richards Foundation has confirmed the full scholarship endowment. Now the press release goes out at noon. Richard had passed away 3 months earlier, but not before extracting a promise from Julian to establish the Westbrook Manning Foundation for Arts Education, a program that would provide full scholarships to underprivileged children with creative talents. The foundation's inaugural event was scheduled to follow Olivia's presentation, a deliberate pairing that symbolized Lumiere's new direction. Ethan's with Patricia from HR until 3, then Dominic will bring him to the auditorium for the rehearsal. Julian continued, consulting his phone. The dinosaur tie you ordered arrived this morning. I put it in his backpack with a note. Olivia smiled at his methodical approach to what was essentially co-parenting. Corporation, and not just our family calendar. The corporation is significantly less complex, Julian replied with the dry humor that had emerged as his walls came down. He checked his watch. Board meeting in 10 minutes. I should go. He kissed her briefly, another change that had startled his executive team, the first time he'd done it casually before a meeting. As he turned to leave, Olivia caught his hand. Have you decided what you're going to tell him? Julian's expression softened. I thought I'd let the moment guide me. The moment came sooner than expected. That afternoon, as Olivia rehearsed her presentation on the auditorium stage, she spotted Ethan racing down the center aisle, dinosaur tie askew, waving a paper excitedly. Mom, Julian, look what Miss Patricia helped me make, he called, scrambling onto the stage. Julian knelt to examine the document, which appeared to be a carefully crafted certificate emblazoned with dinosaur stickers. Very impressive. What's the occasion? It's for family day at school next week, Ethan explained, suddenly turning serious. Everyone has to make a family tree. He pointed to the diagram, where Olivia's name sat at the top of one branch. See. That's Mom and Grandma and Grandpa Reed, and then there's an empty spot here. Julian's expression remained carefully neutral as he studied the paper. An empty spot? Ethan nodded solemnly. Miss Patricia said I should ask you something important. He took a deep breath, the way he did before diving into the pool. She said I should ask if you want to be on my family tree even though you and Mom aren't married yet. She said sometimes families happen in different orders. The auditorium fell silent. Olivia's heart squeezed as she watched Julian struggle to maintain his composure, the man who could negotiate multi-million-dollar deals without blinking now. Rendered speechless by a 6-year-old with a paper covered in stickers. I would be honored to be on your family tree, Ethan, Julian finally said, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. but there's something I'd like to ask. You first. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box, not the jeweler's box Olivia might have expected, but something that looked handmade. I was going to save this for tonight, but perhaps now is better. Ethan opened the box to reveal two items. A small, polished fossil set in a pendant and a folded piece of paper. The ammonite is 65 million years old, Julian explained as Ethan examined it reverently. It's been through more changes than most of us can imagine. The important part is this. He helped Ethan unfold the paper legal documents that Olivia recognized immediately. These papers, when signed by a judge, would make me your legal father, Julian explained, his voice gentle. Not just on your family tree, but in every way that matters, if that's something you would want. Ethan's eyes widened. You'd be my real dad? Forever? Forever? Julian confirmed. Though I should probably ask your mother if that's all right with her. They both turned to Olivia, who found herself unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Instead, she nodded, watching as her son threw his arms around Julian's neck with complete trust and joy. Later that evening, after the presentation had received a standing ovation and the foundation launch had garnered pledges, exceeding their most optimistic projections, Julian led Olivia to the rooftop garden that had been transformed with twinkling lights for the celebration. Yeah, there's something else, he said, producing another box, this one unmistakably from a jeweler. I thought it would be appropriate to do this in the traditional order, even if, as Ethan pointed out, our family happened differently. The ring was elegant, but unconventional, a deep blue sapphire surrounded by smaller stones. It reminded me of that first design you showed me, Julian explained. Traditional elements with unexpected innovation. As he slipped it onto her finger, Olivia thought of the journey that had brought them here, from cold first impressions to the warmth they'd created together. Who would have thought the fearsome Julian Westbrook would propose on the same day he asked to adopt a 6-year-old dinosaur enthusiast? Julian smiled, the genuine smile that had once been so rare, but now appeared regularly. Richard used to say that life's greatest opportunities often come disguised as impossibilities. He drew her closer. Single mother and her son were supposed to be complications in my carefully ordered existence. Instead, you became my compass. From the doorway came a small voice. Mom, Julian, they're cutting the cake shaped like a T-Rex. Come on. Ethan stood there, dinosaur tie crooked again, practically vibrating with excitement. Behind him, Dominic gave an apologetic shrug for the interruption. Duty calls, Olivia laughed, taking Julian's hand, as they followed Ethan back to the celebration. Julian leaned close to whisper, I've been thinking about the house on Long Island. The one with the beach access and the separate studio space for your designs. Ethan could have a real yard, room for that dog he's been asking for. Are you suggesting we become suburban parents? Olivia teased. What would the board say? The board, Julian replied with newfound lightness, can adapt to a CEO who prioritizes dinosaur dioramas and school plays alongside quarterly reports. As it happens, Richard left me controlling interest in his shares. I'm now the majority stakeholder. Ahead of them, Ethan had reached the cake, looking back impatiently for them to join him. In that moment, watching Julian quicken his pace to catch up to the boy who would soon legally be his son, Olivia saw not the ending of a fairy tale, but something more valuable. The beginning of a story they would write together, day by day, choice by choice. A story about a man who discovered that the greatest success wasn't measured in profit margins, but in a child's trust. About a woman who found that taking risks could lead to rewards beyond professional achievement. About a boy whose simple belief in people's goodness helped heal wounds that had seemed permanent, as Julian lifted Ethan to better see the prehistoric cake. His other arm wrapped securely around Olivia's waist. She realized that sometimes the most beautiful designs aren't the ones carefully planned from the beginning, but those that evolve naturally, incorporating unexpected elements into something stronger and more meaningful than anything that could have been imagined alone. And, in the end, that was the greatest masterpiece of all, not the collection receiving accolades in the hall below, but the family they had created, stitch by careful stitch, from threads that once seemed impossibly separate.